From 1856 to 1857, a prophecy of a 15-year-old Xhosa girl would lead to a movement where Xhosa people would deliberately slaughter all their enormous stock of cattle, as well as kill all their crops. As a result, around 40,000 Xhosa people died during that time because of starvation, from slaughtering about 400,000 cattle in the hopes of a new world and that the Xhosa people would be purified from their sins. This is the story of Nongqawuse. Born in 1841 near Xhosa River, which is now known as the Wild Coast in the Eastern Cape Province, Nongqawuse's parents died when she was young. Not much is known about her parents, but they died around 1850 to 1853. After her parents' passing, Nongqawuse was now an orphan, and that's when she went to go live with her uncle. His name was Nongqawuse, who was the son of a councillor of the Xhosa king, Sakhilikainza. Now, Nongqawuse's uncle was a very religious man, a Xhosa spiritualist who was very familiar with Christianity. He was the one who had major influence in Nongqawuse's life. Her uncle was the one who would interpret and organize her visions. One day, around the month of April 1856, Nongqawuse is 15 years old at this time. She and a friend of hers, Unombanda, who was 5 to 7 years younger than Nongqawuse, went to go scare birds from her uncle's crops in the field by the sea. When they returned from the field, Nongqawuse told her uncle that she met the spirits of 2 of her ancestors, and that these spirits, she claimed, had told her that the Xhosa people should destroy their crops and kill their cattle, which was a source of their wealth as well as their food. She then continued to tell her uncle that the ancestors who had appeared to them told them the following: the dead would arise, all living cattle would have to be slaughtered, having been reared by contaminated hands. Cultivation would cease. New grain would have to be dug. New houses would have to be built. New cattle enclosures would have to be erected. New milk sacks would have to be made. Doors would have to be weaved with buka roots. People must abandon witchcraft, incest, and adultery. In return, those who have died would return and help expel the white people. These ancestors would bring cattle with them to replace those that have been killed. At first, the uncle did not really believe her. Later, however, when she described one of the ancestors she claimed to have seen, her uncle started to become convinced because he believed that she was describing his late brother. This is when he started to become convinced that she was telling the truth. And so, the uncle went to go see Sakhili, who was the Xhosa king. Remember, his father was also a counselor to Sakhili, so they probably had a good relationship with the king. Nongqawuse's uncle then repeated what his niece told him to the Xhosa king Sakhili. Sakhili then ordered the commands of the spirits to be obeyed, but not all Xhosa people were convinced and believed in Nongqawuse's prophecies, and those who did not believe in her prophecy were given names like Amagogotya, meaning the stingy ones. They were a really small group who actually refused to slaughter and neglect their crops. Most Xhosa people actually believed in Nongqawuse's prophecy, and as a result, around 400,000 herds of cattle were killed, and most Xhosa people started neglecting their crops, doing exactly what they believed should be done in order for them to bring the Xhosa nation back to its former glory. Now, before Nongqawuse's prophecy, from 1854, their cattle were experiencing lung sickness. The disease arrived in South Africa with infected animals imported from the Netherlands by the settlers in 1853. This is probably why a small group of Xhosa people, Amagogotya, the stingy ones, refused to slaughter their cattle, because already they had lost cattle from lung sickness, and the cattle was their wealth and source of food. The first time the Xhosa people were ordered to destroy their fat cattle, Nongqawuse was standing in the river where the spirits had first appeared. Unearthly noises were heard, and interpreted by the uncle, he said that it meant more cattle need to be killed, even the ones that had remained, and every grain of corn was to be destroyed. He also continued to interpret this as if all that was done on the date that was given, lots of cattle and more beautiful than those destroyed would appear from earth, and also great fields of corn ripe and ready for harvest would instantly appear. The dead would arise, the trouble and sickness would vanish, the people would look youthful and beautiful. Kraals were also prepared for the promised cattle and huge skin sacks to hold the milk that was soon to be more plentiful than water. The unbelievers and the white man would on that day die. By the end of 1856, many cattle had been killed, but none of what was prophesied had come to fruition. Now, those Xhosa people that believed in the prophecy started blaming those that did not believe in the prophecy. They blamed them and said that they were selfish in keeping their cattle. Hunger started to set in, and those that did not believe in the prophecy were blamed and became outcasts, even though they were not that better off than the believers. Those that did not believe in the prophecy at least still had farms, but they were not much of help, as those who had lost everything were stealing from them. By February 1857, starvation and destitution was widespread. There was also no definite date that had been set for this supposed new beginning of the new world. But this time, so many cattle had been killed, and at this point, people even thought there was no sense in keeping those that had remained alive. At this point, the Xhosa people were starting to grow impatient and they needed answers. Sahili, the king, went to go visit Nongqawuse and her uncle and spoke with them for a very long time. After talking to the two, he came back and he announced that the new world would begin in 8 days. All that was promised would come true in 8 days' time. He also told the Xhosa people that on the 8th day, the sun would rise blood red before setting again, and that there would be a huge thunderstorm, and that's when the dead would arise. So during the 8 days, the cattle killing was on the rise, and more of those that did not believe in the prophecy were now giving in. The 8th day came, the sun rose just like any other day. Believers on that day stayed indoors and the doors were closed, occasionally peeping outside through a little hole in their houses until the sun disappeared. As a result of the cattle killing and destroying of the crops, around 40,000 people died from starvation. The government of the Cape then instigated a massive program of labor recruitment, which led to thousands of Xhosa people being transported across the border into the Cape Colony. Magistrates were instructed only to give food and relief to those who were willing to be contracted for labor in the colony. Those who agreed were made to sign a term of agreement expressing their willingness to work anywhere in the Cape Colony for any wage that was offered. Initially, after the failure of Nongqawuse's prophecy, her believers blamed those who had not obeyed her instructions, then later on turned against her. Nongqawuse was then moved from her uncle's home by the chief of Bomvana, and she was handed over to Major Gola, a British Army officer who had served as the second governor of South Australia from 1839 to 1841. He was deeply religious. Nongqawuse stayed at his home for a period. Now one day, Gola's wife decided to dress Nongqawuse and Prophetess Nongqawuse and have their picture taken by a photographer, and this is the picture that we see now. After Nongqawuse left the Gola's house, she went to go live on a farm in Alexandria district in the Eastern Cape. Nongqawuse died in 1898, and I believe she was 57 years old at the time. Now, thank you so much for watching. We've reached the end of the video. Please feel free to comment and like my videos. Also, do feel free to subscribe. Also, tell me what you think of Nongqawuse. Yeah, it's a lot. I have my own theories, but anyway, what do you guys think? please do comment below. Thank you so much. Goodbye.